Welcome to Comic Shop News. I'm Dan, and today we're going to be talking about Avengers Endgame and doing spoilers. So, just a warning to you that I'm going to be discussing everything that happens in the movie. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, just pass the video for now and come back when you've watched the movie. So, I'm going to start out right away. The movie starts on a heavy note. Hawkeye, as we saw in one of the trailers, he's teaching a young girl how to shoot a bow and arrow. And it's his daughter and the rest of his family. And we see how the snap happens. His whole family's taken away. Really brutal scene, and we get to what's going to push Hawkeye further in the story and how he kind of goes over a cliff because of just this grief he has for his family. After this scene, then, we're brought to Tony doing a digital recording for Pepper. Basically, they're running out of oxygen. Him and Nebula have kind of become buddies. They're playing flick football, and he falls asleep, and then he wakes up to this glowing outside, and Cosmic Uber Captain Marvel is outside, and as I've noted before in some of the other stuff, she's just overpowered. She basically carries the entire starship and flies it to the Avengers compound on Earth. When they get there, he's basically freaked out. The rest of the Avengers they find where Thanos is hiding because of the way the gems leave this cosmic residue when they done it, and he's made this planet grow into what he calls a garden. So they get there, and Thanos is unable to move his hand that had the Infinity Gauntlet on. Turns out he fried half of his body because he destroyed the gems. He used the gems to destroy the gems. It's pretty fascinating. He's kind of resigned to what he did was inevitable. He won, and he made sure no one can undo it. And as they're talking to him, trying to figure out what to happen, Thor just runs up and cuts his head off. Thor, again, he's broken from everything that's happened. He's lost. As you know from the other movies, he's never handled losing very well at all. So he just kind of walks off, and all the Avengers are kind of left looking at each other like, oh crap, what the hell do we do? And then we do a 5-year jump. We have Captain America have the support group. As I noted in the other video, he's got Joel or Anthony Russo. I forget which one of the Russo brothers is. Jim Starlin's there, and he's talking to them about moving on. From there, we see Natasha, the Black Widow, and she has Okoye, War Machine, Captain Marvel, and talking to them about what to do, where do they go, and kind of trying to take care of problems that are happening. Captain Marvel has cut her hair by now. She is in outer space taking care of space stuff. She really is not in the movie again till near the end. They kind of oversold her being important to this movie. I mean, she's important, but not in the way you think she is. So, I'm going to take us through where the characters are at this point. Hawkeye, after what happened to his family, he takes this identity of Ronin and just starts this one-man assault on crime. Like, he's fighting the Yakuza, he's fighting the cartels. Natasha's keeping tracks of where he's at. The Hulk, after what happened in Infinity War, since the Hulk just was not coming out anymore due to the fact he was scared and beaten, Banner decides he's going to stop treating him like a disease and try to put the best of both worlds. He succeeds, and we get what is called Professor Hulk. Professor Hulk is basically Mark Ruffalo beefed up on roids. So he's got the best of Banner. There's a scene later where he's like, I like wearing shirts, and I don't, run around saying smash anymore. So I'm an old-time Hulk fan, and during the Peter David run with, I think Dale Keown on art, we had Professor Hulk. So it was kind of cool for me as a longtime comic fan to see this. Natasha is pretty broken after what has happened, and just trying to do what she's always done, even when it's not quite working out how it is. Captain America, he's doing the support groups. He's still trying to figure out what's to be done. Thor basically walked away. New Asgard has been formed where all the refugees went, and he's kind of the king of that area. He's also basically become the dude from Big Lebowski and sits around playing Fortnite and drinking beer with Korg and Meek. Find that out later as they go to get him. Iron Man has almost died in space, almost died in a wormhole. So to say the least, he has somewhat of a trauma going along with it. Him and Pepper settle down and they have a family. He has a young daughter named Morgan who's just the cutest thing ever. And you see this other side of Tony that you haven't seen. War Machine is there. He kind of is keeping tabs on Barton and where he is and where he's going. Okoye is basically helping run Wakanda. Again, Denai Guerrera, she's awesome. She continues to have that quiet strength as Michonne and as Okoye. Also, after 5 years being trapped in the quantum realm, a rat happens to walk across the dashboard of the impounded van that Scott Lang has and frees him. And he does a little bit of trying to catch up with what the hell's been going on. Ken Jeong also is working in the impounding center that the van was at. And Scott starts trying to figure out what happened. And he ends up going to finding, I should say, it's almost like the Vietnam Wall they have in San Francisco, and it has all of the names of everybody who disappears, and he sees his name on it, and he freaks out and starts running. He goes to his old house, and now fully realizes a 5-year time jump has happened because he sees his daughter, and his daughter is taller and aged. So he starts to freak out. So eventually it ends up leading him to the Avengers compound, and he talks about what happened to him in the quantum realm and how they might be able to figure out time travel. And it might be able to happen, and they're basically at the point of, we have to try no matter what. So they go and they find, since Tony they figure is just completely out, they go and find Professor Hulk. Professor Hulk is at a diner or a restaurant eating the biggest breakfast you've ever seen, and kids are coming over wanting to take pictures, and he's posing with them, taking selfies, say green, and he's, doing this, or he has his fist out. And then Ant-Man's like, oh, do you want to take a picture with Ant-Man? And they're like, nah. He's like, oh, no, I do. Take a picture. And it's kind of funny a little bit with the celebrity thing going on with Hulk. And, he's sitting there going, oh, yeah, but listen to your mother. She's smart. She's a smart woman. Look at her over there. So they end up trying the time travel and send Scott back. And there's problems with it. He ends up coming back as an old man, a baby. And then they finally get it normal. And he's like, someone peed in my suit. It was either the baby or the old me, or maybe me. I'll just say it now. The movie is very jokey, like extremely jokey, especially with Thor as the dude. Like the bathrobe, the glasses, the big beard. It's rather humorous to actually see this in action. So half of them go there to go get Thor and try and bring the gang back together. Another group goes over to talk to Tony. Tony figures out how to get time travel to work, and him and Pepper have a conversation. She says, you'll never be able to rest unless you do what's right. So Tony's kind of back in the fold. Natasha also goes to get Barton back, and after he's just annihilated the Yakuza, and he talks about, I can't come back from the things I've done. So they do a test run with the time travel, and Barton ends up back on his farm, and he hears his wife talking, and he starts to run the house and, yelling her name. And as he does that, they snap him back to the normal time. And he says it worked, but you just tell how broken he is yet again. And again, Renner in this movie, he is phenomenal with the way he emotes. So they figure out it works. They only have so many Pym particles to be able to do this. And we end up now on this time travel where groups are going back to different parts of different movies. So Nebula and War Machine end up going to the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy, where Quill is dancing through the alien planet, and it's funny because now War Machine's seeing him dance, not hearing the music playing that Star-Lord's hearing, and he's just like, this guy's a freaking idiot. And then another group goes to the end of Avengers, where, Loki gets beaten, and there's a bit of a snafu, but we see almost two different movie things happen, where Cap ends up in an elevator with Rumlow and the rest of the Hydra agents, and they almost redo the entire elevator scene from Winter Soldier, but then Cap leans in and goes, "Hail Hydra," and they give him the scepter. So that was kind of interesting, but they end up losing the Tesseract. So they end up having to go back further in time to 1970, and Tony Stark meets his dad, and Steve sees Peggy. They get the Tesseract. The Hulk ends up getting the time gem from the Ancient One after saying Stephen Strange gave the time gem to Thanos, and she's like, well, if he did that, then something went terribly wrong, so she allows him to take it. There is a great interaction between Professor Hulk and her. Nebula, unfortunately, is her wires are crossing with the Nebula of that time, and Thanos starts learning what happened. So they take our time's Nebula and switch her out with the one that's still loyal to Thanos and get her back. And while that's happening, Barton and Natasha are getting the Soul Gem. And the Red Skull is there again, Ross Marquand, telling them, have to give up something you love. And Barton and Natasha get into a fight trying to stop the other one from killing themselves. And when all is said and done, Natasha basically manipulates into a point where she's the one who dies and sacrifices her life so Barton can get his family back, or the ability to possibly get his family back, and sacrifice. And again, the hurt in his face, and he gets the gem, and he gets popped back, and he says, Natasha's gone. The Hulk banner, Professor Hulk throws a bench, and basically, he's hurting. He was in love with Natasha at one point. Thor is just being Thor. Again, I thought the jokey Thor was going to go away fairly fast, and it stayed for almost the whole movie. So we move into the final plan. While they're getting their final plans ready, Hulk gets the gauntlet, and he snaps, and they see that he brought people back. But as that's happening, Nebula manages to get in, turn on the quantum, I don't even know what it's called, quantum platform, and Thanos' ship comes through and just nukes the Avengers complex. And through this comes one of the most amazing battles. There's still people underground. Cap, Thor, and Iron Man manage to get out, and Thanos is just sitting there waiting. He has his scepter and staff into the ground. It's like a double-bladed sword. And as they come out, Thor finally powers up, and he gets this long Viking beard braid. He kind of almost looks like a dwarf at this point from The Hobbit. But the battle starts, and as it's going on, just Thanos seems even more overpowered than he was in the last movie, because they're just not even getting licks in. Barton gets the glove. The Chitauri are chasing him down underground. Hulk is just beaten up. Rocket and War Machine manage to get out. And Thanos is basically wrecking shop, and he takes out Thor and Iron Man. Steve's the last one, and his shield's broken. He gets back up, and Thanos starts talking. The error I made was I never took things personal, and I'm about to change that now and take pleasure in doing this. And talks about how he should have wiped everyone out and just started anew and made sure they never remembered the old world, and that was his mistake. So now he has even more conviction than he had before. And Steve gets up, and as he's getting up, Thanos has started just glaring at him, and he hears Sam in his earpiece saying, "Cap, on your left." And then you see the Doctor Strange portal start opening up. And I'm not going to lie, I got a little choked up here. all of a sudden you see T'Challa, Okoye, and Shuri start walking through, and then all these other portals start opening up, and you saw like the army of Wakanda coming through, all these sorcerers, Doctor Strange, Wong, uh, the Valkyrie, Pepper Potts as Safety, I think was her name. Rescue, in the rescue armor, and just basically anybody who's ever appeared in the Marvel Universe starts coming out. Gamora is convinced by our current day Nebula to stop older Nebula, and Nebula ends up shooting her older self. I don't know if she killed her, but this current Nebula, also there's a lot of time travel jokes, and they joke about Back to the Future not being the staple of time travel. So we're brought into the last hour is just set piece after set piece of wowing you to death. And the biggest battle you've ever seen, the Chitauri forces, the Black Order, Thanos, you had Spidey back. There's a scene where all the women take over and launch an assault. Scarlet Witch goes ham on Thanos. And Captain Marvel comes in and she starts wailing on him, takes down Thanos' flagship. But as all this happens, Thanos gets the glove, and Captain Marvel's wrestling with him. He heads up, butts her, and she laughs. They're going blow to blow. And smartly, he pops out the power gem, puts in his hand, and he basically punches her to orbit. So Iron Man sees this, and he's putting it back in, about to power up, and Doctor Strange kind of puts a finger up in the air. And earlier he told Tony that he couldn't tell him if they win or not because it would affect what actually happens. Tony goes and he starts wrestling with, somehow his armor was able to take in the gems, and he gets it, and he does his own snap. He wipes out the Chitauri, the Black Order, Thanos. Thanos turns to dust. The day is won, but at the same time, the price was paid. Tony ends up having to die. It burned out his body, because before they said, a human without God powers, it would basically destroy them, and it destroys him. And Pepper comes over, she's crying, and like there was a woman wailing next to me when the scene happens, but she's like, you can sleep now. And Peter comes over and starts kind of crying, and it's a very emotional scene. Everybody is pretty destroyed by it. Also, I left out, so Captain America during this fight wields Mjolnir, and he starts going to town with the hammer. Seems to know exactly how to use the hammer too, which is also fascinating. But he was deemed worthy. Thor has his battle. I mean, everybody gets their shot and their licks in this movie and their chance to shine. Unfortunately, like Star-Lord, really, he gets a scene or two, but kind of forgotten in this. This is more about the original Avengers and some of the side characters. Underused, I guess you could say. Disappointing nonetheless that some characters kind of got pushed to the background, but I understand why. This was about the Avengers coming and saving the day. It was a little bit disappointing because after the Hulk uses the Infinity Gauntlet, his arm is just burned up and everything, and he says he tried to bring Nat back and it didn't work. He is completely absent during the final battle, but we do get Giant Man in, and Giant Man punches down one of the Chitauri starships. It's great scene pieces, and as I referenced in the non-spoiler, that you just, it is like a George Perez piece of art come to life, where every character you've ever seen in the movies is there. The only thing missing really was Ultron, and Vision did not come back, of course. Anybody who died not from the gems was still dead. Great set pieces, and again, it wows you to death, literally. So we have Iron Man dead, Thanos is dead. Push forward, there's Tony, his hologram of him, and he is telling his daughter that he loves her with 3,000. The daughter's broken up. Happy's kind of like saying, do you want cheeseburgers? Your dad loved cheeseburgers. The funeral happens, and everybody who was ever part of Tony's world was there. We also see the kid from Iron Man 3 is there just grown up a little bit more. It was kind of shocking at first because like it had some people in the row going like, "Who the hell is that kid?" Uh, I it weirdly I was okay with it. I know some people weren't happy that you didn't think Tony had to die, but I kind of thought the way he died was actually pretty damn decent. I mean, there's probably MacGuffins. No one's really dead in the Marvel Universe or comic book movies. So you just kind of start wondering, okay, how is this going to work? After all that, we go to a scene, and Professor Hulk is with Winter Soldier and Falcon, and they're sending Steve back in time to go put all the gems back where they got them so they don't alter time and history too much. So they go back to the exact moment when they flip the switch to bring Steve back. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. And Hulk's flipping out, like trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And Bucky turns, and then he sees an old man sitting on the bench. A little bit sort of Forrest Gumpy here. And him and Falcon walk over, and they see it's Steve as an old man. Steve put everything back, and he got rid of the Pym particles and the quantum suit and decided that he needed to live. And Falcon looks down at his hand, and he sees he's got a wedding ring on. He's like, "You going to talk about that?" And he goes, "Nah, I don't think I am." He gives Sam the shield, and Sam's like, I think this is something that belongs to someone else. And he says, "I think you'll do fine." My guess is this is what's going to lead into the Falcon Winter Soldier Disney Plus series. And probably the most beautiful ending that I could have imagined is they then throw back after that to playing 1940s music, and they close in on a house and go through the window, and it's Steve dancing with Peggy. So he got his happy ending, and honestly, that's the best ending you could have asked for. And actually, Captain America had a lot of good parts in this movie, the ending being the best. But there's a scene where he's fighting his older self after he gets the scepter, and his younger self I guess it would be his younger self. The one from Avengers goes, "I can do this all day." And he's like, yeah, I've heard this before. And Peggy ends up, not the picture of Peggy lands on the floor, and it stuns the other one just enough. And he says, "Bucky's alive," and then knocks him out. As this happens, though, he's walking by, he goes, "Scott was right. That is America's ass." And then someone made a joke about Captain America's ass in the suit, and Scott goes, "No, that's America's ass." So it's a joke that comes back. There are a couple of these jokes that come back. Thor has relinquished his rule over New Asgard to the Valkyrie, and he goes with Rocket to go with the Asgardians of the galaxy, and him and Quill are having a back and forth about who's the captain. It's great, and again, ever since they realized that Hemsworth is good at humor, they've really hammered into it. Peter goes back to school, which I'm kind of curious because he's been gone for 5 years. So I'm curious how this all works in, or if everybody's just like, "You know what? It's fine. You were dead. We're just gonna elevate you a grade or a couple." So yeah, that was the Avengers. Again, it's 9 out of 10. There are some MacGuffins in it that you just have to grin and bear it. The whole time travel thing, because you'd think they would have altered more. I did love the movie. I'm probably going to see it again. I just have to carve out 3 hours to go see it again. The rewatchability is going to be a test for me because, again, it's 3 hours, so it's not like something you could just pop in and kind of forget about it for, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I just want to thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Thank you, and great watching, true believers.